Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified Doctor of Naturopathy, Dr. Stephen Cabral, shares with you exactly how you can reverse aging, take back your health, and live a life full of energy and passion, with new 20-minute episodes every single day to keep you healthy and engaged. Now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everybody. Great to be here with you today, finally settling the debate of what is worse, at least for the brain, alcohol or marijuana. So right now, I think cannabis, at least marijuana, cannabis, we can just use the names interchangeably right now, is becoming more and more popular. And to me, at least when I look around the health-based circle, less and less people are really partaking in alcohol because we know of all the detrimental based effects. However, does cannabis or marijuana have the same negative effects, at least on the brain, as alcohol? I want to share with you a study that was very significant. I think it was the largest brain study of its kind. It was done on almost 65,000 individuals, and I will link it up right now if you'd like at stephencabral.com/2735 under the what's worse, marijuana or alcohol. So, again, regardless of how you feel about these two things, I always want to share with you that whenever I do a podcast, whenever I teach, for example, the whole reason for this show is that I just finished Module 7 in High Performance Health, and we teach all about anti-aging principles, and we take the bias out of it. So what I like to share with people is, regardless of whether you like cannabis or not, or like alcohol or not, or feel it contributes to health or contributes to poor health, that's almost like we have to put that aside. We have to put aside our dogma for what we feel is the best diet, the best exercise, the best supplement. All of those things have to be put aside. And what the job of any good scientist or practitioner and just general person looking to improve their health is to really do this. Like, what did Ayurvedic medicine say, and let's say traditional Chinese medicine say, 3,000 to 6,000 years ago about these things? Let's read that, okay? But let's not take that as the end all be all. Now let's look at the modern day medical literature and let's say, what did that look like? And if the two line up, right? Like, and if you look at this from an unbiased perspective and they line up, I called that the overlap. The overlap is what I consider to be a pretty good bet, like a safe place to be. Is it always perfect? Maybe not, but it's pretty close, right? But when modern day scientific research conflicts with Ayurvedic medicine for what we've known for the past 6,000 years, I take that with a grain of salt. I say, okay, interesting. And when I read things in Ayurveda and it hasn't been proven out yet in modern day medical science, double-blind placebo studies, I say, okay, like, let's learn more about this. I think that there's a give and take. But then when there's overlap and we can actually prove why these things work, pretty amazing. So what I want to share with you again is what's considered the world's largest brain-based study, I believe. It was done on 62,454 individuals, and it was a brain scan. And I'm going to read it to you right now. So this was published, it was done in conjunction with Dr. Amen and the Amen clinics, best known for their brain scans and looking for dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, etc. And it was done in conjunction with Johns Hopkins University, University of California, Los Angeles, and University of Cal, San Francisco. And they used the SPECT scan. So basically it's a brain scan that lights up the brain, and it looks at the overall health of the brain. It's called a single photon emission computed tomography. So it's a map of the brain. And what they did in this study is they looked at 128 different areas of the brain on individuals, 30,000. This is a subset of it, 30,000 individuals from 9 months old to 105 years old. And now the 9 months old were not using alcohol, they were not using cannabis, but these were then looking at healthy brains, right? Because we're gonna look at the aging brain, like what does it look like? And then use that to see how the brain ages throughout life. People using cannabis, people using alcohol, just one, etc. So I'm going to read you exactly just an excerpt from the study, and then I'll give you an interpretation of what it all means. So based on one of the largest brain imaging studies ever done, we can now track common disorders and behaviors that prematurely age the brain. Better treatment of these disorders can slow or even halt the process of brain aging. The cannabis abuse finding was especially important as our culture is starting to see marijuana as an innocuous substance. So that's interesting. So basically what it says is people are looking more to cannabis as something that's completely harmless. And so we wanted to take a look at this study. It's also saying that they're looking at the top 4 or 5 things that age the brain the fastest. And I'll give you actually how quickly those things age the brain in just a moment. Okay, so the study used the SPECT imaging, which I spoke to you about. It determines aging trajectories in the brain and which common brain disorders predict abnormality and abnormally accelerated aging. It examined these functional neuroimaging scans from a large multi-site psychiatric clinic from patients who had many different psychiatric disorders, including bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. The researchers studied 128 brain regions to predict the chronological age of the patient. Older age predicted from the scan compared to the actual chronological age was interpreted as accelerated aging. All right, so let me just repeat that. Older age predicted from the scan compared to the actual chronological age was interpreted as accelerated aging. So if they looked at a normal 65-year-old's brain and that say, okay, this is a normal brain that they typically see over all these, 62,000 plus scans. And this one looks like a 71-year-olds, they would say, okay, but it's a 65-year-olds. Yes, okay, we can see that is accelerated aging in the brain. And this is actually not difficult to see. You can see it on MRIs, you can see it on PET scans, you can see it on the SPECT scan. And I was just teaching this in high performance health. The brain, if not cared for, at least the hippocampus shrinks about 1 to 2% per year as we move into adulthood. You can actually look at the brains on an autopsy of Alzheimer's disorder Alzheimer's disease versus a healthy brain. The brain is like a half to 3/4 of the size, and it has holes in it. It's unbelievable. You can just type into Google cross-section of the brain. You know what I'll do? I'll just link it up for you because I have really great images. So they'll be right at StephenCabral.com/2735 cross sections of the brain for a healthy brain versus Alzheimer's. It will blow your mind. Now, the good thing is we know how to catch Alzheimer's decades in advance, as well as the protocols to stop and reverse Alzheimer's that have been scientifically proven to work for 9 out of 10 people. And the 10th person it didn't work for had terminal Alzheimer's. The brain had already shrunken, had holes in it, etc. Okay, so I'm going to cut right to the chase and share with you exactly what the study found. So it looked at 5 different major accelerated aging predictors. All right, the worst one from top to bottom was schizophrenia. When you looked at a normal brain, but someone with schizophrenia, or they had schizophrenia, the brain looked 4 years older. All right, so 65-year-old looked 69. Someone who used cannabis or marijuana, the brain looked almost 3 years older, 2.8 years older. Someone with bipolar disorder, their brain looked 1.6 years older. Someone with ADHD, a history of ADHD, 1.4 years older. And alcohol abuse, meaning more than the 2 to 3 drinks, per week, 0.6 years older. So when we look at these, this was shocking to me. I would absolutely have picked alcohol to be worse on the brain than cannabis. 100% I would have said that. But that's why we look at the research and we don't guess. Good science does not guess. And this is a well done, very large study, 62,454 brain scans on over 30,000 individuals from 9 months old to 105 years of age. And this is exactly what they found. Now, I want to share with you something I think is fairly interesting. The cannabis wasn't smoked because we know smoke creates massive oxidative damage and free radical damage. Like I would love to see a follow-up study of people who smoke cannabis and people who smoke cigarettes and what it did to the brain. I wish they had done that as part of the study, because what if it was the smoke? What if it had more to do with that? Again, I don't know. I'm just postulating another thing to look at, because I know that smoke can cause an increase in all 5 of the major causes of death: cardiovascular, blood pressure and stroke, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's. All right, so I know that. Now, what if it was edible cannabis, right? What if it was edible, you didn't have any smoke, it wasn't vaped, it wasn't smoked in any way? Would that affect the brain to the same degree? I don't know. I'm not sure that anyone does, but I think that that's worth looking into. Now, I don't think that you should, again, abuse any of these things. I think that cannabis can actually be used for medical treatments. I know that it can. I've seen the efficacy. But, there might be an issue with smoking it, or there might be just the cannabidiol, the THC. This is actually tetrahydrocannabinoids instead of CBD, right? So I think it's important to look at. I think we need a little bit more research as to whether it was the smoke or whether it was the cannabis itself. But I'm telling you right now, at least for now, it gives you pause, meaning since we don't know, let's go easy, especially the people that use cannabis daily. If you're not using it by medical recommendation, I wonder, why? Like, why are you using that? Is it to help with anxiety? Is it to help with nervousness? Is it to help with sleep? Like, what is it to help with pain? Let's find those underlying root causes, maybe rather than using that every day. Again, but I understand. Like, I sympathize with you if you're using that for pain in any way, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, etc. So I get it, but try to find that underlying root cause, because at least in this study, it's not aiding the brain, it's not aiding the body. Now, I will give you one more caveat. I do think alcohol is a lot more dangerous in everyday life. I know that it leads to a lot more and poor decision making. So just because we didn't see a massive aging of the brain with alcohol, what I would say is it can lead to a lot of other issues. It can lead to stomach cancers and other issues, but also, mental, emotional based issues with that much alcohol consumption. So wanted to share this with you today. I'm actually going to link this up. I believe this was published in the Alzheimer's Journal. It was done by Dr. Amen and his clinics, but it's all going to be linked up if you want to go deeper on it. Some really nice infographics. Plus, I'll give you the Alzheimer's brain versus a normal brain at StephenCabral.com/2735. Have an amazing day, everybody. Please do share this information with as many people as you believe it can serve. Take care. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to StephenCabral.com/rainbarrel.